This first story is called The Men Who Kicked Down My Back Door. This is going to be long. Apologies if it doesn't make sense. I have panic attacks when I think about it, and I struggle to put it all together. This happened back in 2021. I, a 27-year-old female, had just moved from Melbourne to rural Australia to live with my fiancé, my then boyfriend, who's a 29-year-old male. He was on a military posting at the army base and escaped Melbourne's insane COVID lockdowns. The town I moved to is pretty isolated, about 4 to 5 hours to reach any large city in each direction. But it was big enough with a few different suburbs surrounding the main area. Neither of us knew the area before moving, and this led him to get a house in a pretty sketchy part of town. I will try and explain the setup of the house, as this will be important later. The house was old, with huge glass windows everywhere, including the entirety of the front of the house. Because of this, you could see into the kitchen, living room, which is open plan, and one of the unused bedrooms without coming down the driveway. There was an old metal fence to the left of the house, which was about 1.5 meters tall, that went directly into the backyard, and to the right of the house was a small pathway hidden by overgrown bush and plants from the front, with a locked gate. The height of the house that led to the back semi-enclosed patio and back door. The path was right next to the kitchen window, but it was a window that you couldn't see out of when the kitchen light was on, but you could see into. When coming in through the back door from the patio, you would walk through the laundry with an adjacent bathroom into the kitchen, with our bedroom off to the left and a second bedroom directly next to ours. Our bed was on the wall that connected to the living room, which meant it looked right out to the backyard, as it also had huge glass windows. My boyfriend, they should really get curtains. My boyfriend was out field for a week, so I had been home alone. It was summer during this time, and it was hot. The house had terrible AC, so I had been sleeping with the windows open, and had even left the back door wide open on accident when falling asleep a couple of times. I've always felt safe in Australia, and have lived mostly alone since I was 18, so I didn't have an issue with it. What year is this? Who doesn't have an issue with sleeping with their back door wide open? It comes to Friday, my 5th day alone. I decided to walk into town for something to do. The walk took about an hour each way, and when I finally got home, I was looking forward to doing nothing besides getting out of the heat. I spent most of the afternoon, evening in the living room, playing PlayStation and watching TV. I wonder what game she was playing. I had heard a few noises down the side of the house on the path next to the kitchen and leading to the patio that night, but the guy who lived next to us had a workshop of some kind, so I assumed it was him tinkering around. I am one of those people who will lay in bed before they are ready to go to sleep, so I go to lay in bed around 10 p.m., and I was doing my nightly scroll of Let's Not Meet. This saved me, as it prompted me to get up out of bed and go close and lock the back door. The back door had a normal lock, and then a reinforced deadlock with a key screwed into the wall. 45 or so minutes later, still hearing the neighbor tinkering around occasionally, I decide I'm ready to actually go to bed. So I go and start turning off all the lights, including the back patio light and the kitchen light. I lay down in bed and am finishing up mindless scrolling, and I hear some noise again, but this time it is a bit louder. I figured it was the guy still in his workshop or some kind of animal, so I decide to put down my phone and go to sleep. After a couple of minutes, I hear a bang at the back door, and I instantly felt like everything went into slow motion. I instinctively knew someone was kicking the back door in, and I thought, this cannot be happening. Then came another bang, and another. It was so loud shaking. I heard glass shattering and the banging just continuing. This felt like it went on for an eternity, but it was a few minutes. In my panic, after the second or third bang, thinking I could scare them off by pretending a man was here, I yelled out, "Oi!" in the deepest voice I could, slammed my bedroom door closed, locked it and called 000, and then pushed my bed against the door. The banging is still going on when I start to call the police, and then it stops. There was nowhere to hide, so I was crouched down in the corner of the room near the bed. While on the phone to the 000, I could hear someone kicking the bedroom door. I'm screaming at this point. I don't remember what I was saying to 000 or what they were saying to me, but I remember praying. The police arrived before they got inside the room. I heard sirens, the banging on the bedroom door stopped, and then I saw torches shining into the bedroom window. Torches. Because I was so scared, I couldn't understand what the 000 operator was saying to me, so I had no idea if the torch light outside was whoever just kicked in my back door and bedroom, or if it was the police. I don't remember how I realized, but it was the police, and the next thing I remember, I'm in the kitchen surrounded by 10 police officers, crying, trying to explain what had happened. I was so inconsolable that the police had to use my boyfriend's army photos on the fridge to get details to call the duty officer to get him to come home. Once I calmed down a bit and my boyfriend got home, I saw the back gate to the patio was broken. The bedroom door was cracked. The back door had been kicked off its hinges with the deadlock completely ripped out from the wall, and the laundry window smashed. There were 2 sets of clear footprints on the door from where they had kicked the door in. I had checked my phone. I called 000 at 12:04 a.m. and had been on the phone for less than 5 minutes. That is a really fast response time for the police. Less than 5 minutes. What I think happened is they followed me back from the walk, could easily see from the road I was alone, and were watching me on the path next to the kitchen for the evening. The noises I thought the neighbor was making was actually them, and once I turned the lights off, they made their move. I don't think they anticipated the back door to be so hard to break down, which is why they smashed the laundry window to unlock it, but couldn't unlock it without the key, so they went back to kicking, but it saved me from whatever they were going to do. They weren't ever caught, and we ended up moving houses within the next few weeks. My boyfriend and I ended up breaking up as he was regularly outfilled or on duty at night, and I couldn't be home alone at night anymore and would panic, cry, and not sleep until the sun would come up, and it put too much strain on our relationship. It wasn't until later that I realized I was experiencing PTSD. I now live in my home city in an apartment building that has 24/7 security and 1 billion cameras, and I have 2 dogs. So, to the guys that kicked in my back door and attempted to get into my room, I have no idea what you are going to do, but let's not meet. And that is the end of this story. Very scary to be in this situation. I'm surprised she didn't try to find a weapon or try and break her own bedroom window to escape the house or something, but that response time from the police, that's nice. I'm glad she's safe in Australia. Whatever their intent was, it was not good. But now she has 2 dogs, so hopefully they're trained and will deter a burglar. I feel so cozy today. I'm just in my pajamas in this old band t-shirt and in my pajama pants. It's a good day to read creepy stories. This next story is called... This This next story comes with a photo, so I'll definitely be posting that. This story is called The 100 Plus Year Old Plantation Home I Grew Up In Was Haunted. Okay, for background, the lady that lived in the home before us had schizophrenia and supposedly died there. I'm the only one who ever experienced anything in that house, save for 1 or 2 encounters. To this day, me and my father believe the woman was trying to communicate with me or show me the things that she'd hallucinate. Here are some of the things that I remember experiencing there. Number 1, random growls. Inside and outside the house, I'd look over the whole house and even run outside and look around my yard, but there was never any animals or people. Number 2, the doll. My sister had a china doll with a hat on a stand on her dresser in our shared bedroom. The eyes of the doll would creep us out, so we'd put her hat down over her eyes. Sometimes we'd leave the room and come back or go to sleep and wake up, and the hat would be right back on the top of her head. I swear to the gods, I watched the whole thing turn on the stand one day, and its hair moved. We moved in 2016, and the doll quit doing things after we got out of there. Number 3, silhouettes. Silhouettes. In windows sometimes I would see silhouettes of people doing the come hither finger motion towards me. The come hither is that, come here. Every time I saw it, I would be absolutely overwhelmed with dread. Number 4, recurring nightmare. This is a strange one. Every year I lived there, on one specific night of the year, June 16th if I recall, I would have a nightmare of this weird life-size doll with an alien head chasing me around. The dream always ended with the thing catching me and ripping my head off. As a kid, I never watched anything graphic or scary, so I can't think of a reason I'd dream about that. This dream stopped happening when we moved out. A recurring dream is really rare. I don't think I've ever had a recurring dream. Number 5, eyes. Everywhere, no matter if it was day or night. If I was alone at any point, I still felt like there was someone right behind me, drilling the back of my head with their eyes. I stayed anxious if my parents weren't near because of this. Number 6, the attic. The thing was full of snakes and birds and bees, and Lord knows, so we screwed a piece of plywood over the attic entrance in my room with 4 screws. I woke up early one morning and saw this apparition standing over my sister's bed, just staring at her sleeping. Its head turned towards me, and I screamed and hid, and my parents checked over every bit of our room to find nothing and no one. We noticed after waking up that somehow overnight 3 of the 4 screws that held the wood covering to the attic were missing. That's pretty scary. Number 7, it. This was the only event that took place that not 1, but 3 people witnessed. Me, my sister, and my father were in our living room at night watching TV, and I remember feeling something strange, almost as if we all sensed something. Our 3 heads turned to the window across from us to see the glowing yellow/white figure of a person just stroll across our front yard. My dad jumped up and ran outside, and me and my sister watched it pass the window. It took my father 5 seconds to get from the couch to the door, but when he opened it, the figure was gone. No one was in our yard or in the fields around us. The grass wasn't even beaten down where we saw it walk. To this day, none of us can explain exactly what we saw. So yeah, that's the long and the short of the experiences I had in my 100-plus-year-old plantation home. If anyone has any possible explanations or suggestions as to what this ghost or ghosts wanted, please let me know. Also, do let me know if y'all want like an old Google Maps screenshot of the house or something. The thing is unsettling to even look at. I drive by it once in a blue moon and I get a pit in my stomach even being on the road in front of the property. And it looks like they did attach a link to the home. So I'll go ahead and post that right here. It is definitely an old home that needs to be repainted. It looks pretty creepy and isolated. It looks like it's an old creaky home, definitely. Okay, moving on to story 3. This story is called They Waited for Me in the Dark. When I was 18, a female, I was living with a host family in rural Ecuador. I was there for a gap year and learning the language and doing an internship as a part of a program. This was 2013. Every Wednesday, I had Spanish class in the nearby city, and I always came back home before dark. To get home, I would take a bus out of the city for about an hour, and then I would have 2 choices. 1, stop at the tiny town and pay a local informal taxi to drive me the last 2 miles, or 2, get off a little later and walk a mile home past my workplace and an animal shelter. One Wednesday, about 4 months into my time in Ecuador, I was feeling more relaxed and left the city at dusk. I thought about option 1 of taking the taxi, but I knew from the past that taxi drivers were often drunk, getting into fights, and had a bad reputation with women. I considered walking that first route, but I knew there were aggressive dogs that way, and I felt like I could be a target for a drunk or anyone really along that road. So I stayed on the bus for option 2. The problem with option 2 was that the walk home was unlit on a mostly uninhabited dirt road that no one used, especially at night, which also passed a large empty park. I felt between a rock and a hard place. When I got off the bus and started down the dirt road, I noticed a man walking close behind me. I sped up a bit and he matched my pace. I slowed down and he did the same. I was hoping I was just being paranoid, so I decided to stop to check something in my pocket to let him pass so that I could walk behind. When I did that, he came level with me and stopped to face me, and I knew it was bad. He greeted me and I started walking again without answering, and he walked with me. I was thinking hard then. I am a planner. In many parts of my life, I had before thought that if I ever had come back late, I would take Route 2, and if I had issues, I could stop at that animal shelter, which is the only building along the way where there was a 24-hour guard, because they had desirable exotic animals there. I knew the guards from the daytime, and I thought if they weren't taking a nap on duty, I would get help. So, as this guy is walking with me, I know we are about a quarter mile from the entrance to the shelter. This guy starts asking questions like how old I was, if I lived alone, if anyone was expecting me that night. All obviously creepy questions, and no questions like what's my name or where was I from. I am a tall blonde girl who is obviously not from Ecuador. Or asking questions about how I spoke Spanish. Spanish was obviously not my first language. I was exaggerating about all the people waiting for me at home and tried to seem calm and friendly to try to get to the shelter entrance without him realizing that I was nervous. When I got to the entrance, I stopped and told him that I wanted to see a friend and he could continue on. He told me he would wait for me. Ew, so fucking gross. And I told him no, to go on, and veered into the dark park. I could see him silhouetted against the starry sky at the top of a slight hill in the park, just standing there. I could feel he was watching. Meanwhile, I started knocking on the gate like we do at work to let the guard know that someone known was there. I was hoping beyond hope that he was not sleeping. Luckily, the guard was awake and came to the gate. He immediately let me in and knew something was wrong. I told him what had happened and he was clearly freaked out, but didn't want me to see that so much. He asked if I wanted to wait or walk, and I said walk because I wanted to go home, and he said he would walk home with me the remaining half mile. By that point, the man was gone from the hill and disappeared in the dark. The guard I was with had a flashlight, a police-type baton, and some other things, and he looked tough. We started walking and the guard was using the flashlight. We turned a corner and the light beam hit a red pickup truck parked by the road. All of a sudden, a man jumps from a bush by the truck and into the back. The truck starts and it drives away super fast. The guard and I were shocked. Of course, we assumed it was the same guy that was following me. This was a setup. The guard walked me home and I called my program mentor that night. At the time, I was fully shaken and I knew I would never return after dark again. But looking back with a bit more wisdom, I realized that was a really, really close call. The next day, the guard told all my coworkers what happened, and they were super protective of me from then on. I strongly believe that they understood far better than me the danger I had been in or was potentially in, and they shielded me a bit. Later that week, we heard that 2 girls had been raped and murdered in that park. My program encouraged me not to share the story to help protect the image of my host community, but I see clearly that they were scared to death with lashback they would get. I loved Ecuador and I went on to live and work multiple years there. Still, one of the closest life or death experiences I've ever had. Stories like this get me so pissed off. You just want to fucking beat the shit out of these guys, throw them into a fucking pit of lava. I don't know. Last night, I was talking to my sister-in-law's father, and he was telling me stories about when he used to live in Mexico when he was a little boy and what it was like. And he talked about how women would be kidnapped all the time. If you were a single woman and you were alone out in public, you had a high chance of being kidnapped, which is, I just don't understand. I'm sorry this girl had to go through that. Thank God she's safe. Unfortunately, it sounds like 2 other women weren't so lucky. Before I flip a table, I'll move on to the next story. This next story is called, Was This a Ghostly Stalking or Was This a Silly Prank? Either way, that night was not fun. Long ago, it was a terrifying night. I had the most chilling experience of my life. I was 15 years old, living in a small, quiet town where everybody knew each other. It was a peaceful place, or so I thought, until that unforgettable night. My parents were away for the weekend, leaving me in the care of my older sister Emma. She was 16 and loved the idea of being in charge. That night, we decided to watch a movie. Halfway through, there was a knock at the door. Emma paused the movie. We thought it was just a neighbor or a friend, but when she opened the door, there was nobody there. We shrugged it off and went back to watch our movie. We weren't bothered because we thought it was just some of the other kids playing pranks. Later that night, I woke up to a weird tapping sound on my window. I was a bit scared because of the dark, but I mustered the courage to peek through the blinds. There, in the dim moonlight, I saw someone or something in all black standing in our backyard, just staring at the house. My heart raced. I ran to Emma's room and woke her up. When we both looked again, the figure was gone. The next day we told our parents about the incident, but they said it was probably just a lost traveler or a neighbor's guest. If there's somebody standing in your yard in the middle of the night, you're not going to think, oh, it must be a lost traveler, and carry on with your night. The following night, the tapping returned, more persistent this time. It sounded like someone was intentionally trying to scare us. I told Emma and she called her parents, but there was no answer. We were alone and scared. Emma decided to call the police, but as soon as she picked up the phone, the tapping stopped. We felt relieved, but still uneasy. We tried to sleep, but a sudden loud bang from downstairs jolted us awake. Emma grabbed a flashlight and we tiptoed downstairs. The living room was a mess. Books from the shelves were thrown onto the floor and the couch cushions were scattered. Then we heard a whisper, a faint, eerie voice coming from the kitchen. It was singing in a slow, haunting tune. Emma signaled for us to sneak back upstairs, but as we turned, the kitchen light flicked on by itself. We bolted upstairs, locked ourselves in our room, and pushed my dresser against the door. We huddled together, listening as footsteps started coming up the stairs, slow and heavy. They stopped right outside of my room. The doorknob rattled gently, then more violently. We were trembling, holding each other tightly. The house went silent for a moment. Then a voice, soft and raspy, spoke from the other side of the door. "I know you're in there, kids." We didn't respond. Then the sound of footsteps receded. We stayed awake the whole night. We were so scared to even breathe. In the morning, our parents came back and found us asleep in my room, the dresser still blocking the door. We explained everything and they called the police. The officers found no signs of forced entry, but they did find footprints outside, beneath my window and around the house. After that incident, my parents installed security cameras and an alarm system. The police patrols in our area increased, but the scariest part was that they never caught the person who stalked and terrified us that night. Sometimes, when I'm alone, I hear a faint tapping and I freeze, wondering if it's just my imagination or if that stalker has returned. And that's the end of that creepy story. I have to say, definitely not a ghost. That was a crazy fucking burglar. Who knows who that person was, but that is scary. This is very creepy. Nothing was stolen or missing. They just trashed the living room and said that they know the kids were in there. Creepy. So creepy. That was a good one. Okay, guys. I know this video isn't the longest, but that is it for the 4 creepy stories today. I hope you found them as creepy as I did, and that you're able to sleep well tonight. My next video is going to be a playthrough of Our Life Beginnings and Always, so keep an eye out for that. I will finish that game. And then on another note, if you are a fan of fantasy or Dungeons and Dragons or just listening to somebody tell a story, then head on over to my brother's YouTube channel, the Dungeoncast. He just came out with a really good video that I'm very proud of. I just commented on it today as well. and it is called, let me just double check, The Tale of Zariel the Fallen. So good. He was showing it to me before he released it, and honestly, I think it's the best video he's ever made. So I told him I would tell my YouTube viewers about it as well. So, and I'll leave a link either down below or in the video, whatever's easiest.